Now, I've been looking forward to this next conversation. I've been joined live on the line by Dr. Harry G. Broadman, who is a former U.S. Assistant Trade Representative, as well as a Chief of Staff to the President's Council of Economic Advisors. That was under George H.W. Bush and under Bill Clinton. Harry also served as a member of the U.S. Committee on Foreign Investment and is now seen as a global authority on international trade. Welcome to the program, Harry.
Thank you very much, John. Terrific to be with you.
Thank you and welcome. Can I ask you, first of all, a broad question? What do you think Donald Trump's second presidency is going to mean for investment into the American economy?
Well, I think, his hallmark is, unfortunately, to engender greater uncertainty about what is American economic policy, which, of course, when there's uncertainty, all other things equal, that tends to chill investment inbound to the U.S., let alone what I'm sure we're going to talk about is what does it mean for the global economy. Yeah. I think uncertainty itself is really the Achilles heel of investors' thoughts and prayers.
Right. And I'm very keen to get your thoughts on President Trump's impact and coming impact on the global economy. But I must ask you about this because you'll know very well, I'm sure, in the last 24 hours, President Trump has paused America's Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which means that American companies, can bribe foreign governments and officials to win contracts without fear of prosecution. The president said it's going to mean a lot more business for America. Tell me, Harry, what do you make of that?
Well, to say it's foolhardy is an understatement. Now, whether he's able to actually put the kibosh on that, I think, is another matter, because it's a law, it's a statute, and Congress will have a lot to say about that. But in terms of the practical effects, creating an incentives, even nominally so, for businesses, U.S. businesses, to close their eyes to bribes and other kinds of shenanigans is not going to do our economy nor the global economy well, and it siphons off resources that otherwise would be invested to much better uses than bribing officials from other countries, either to invest in the United States or make investments abroad.
Yes. I mean, have a listen to this, if you would, Harry, because I've been speaking to, when it comes to the wider impacts around the world, I've been speaking to a senior Crown prosecutor, and he made the point that the playing field for competition for contracts was then being dragged back into the mud where no one would see what was going on, and that would cause what he called a race to the bottom, where corruption pays, and there's a penalty for playing straight and playing fair. Just have a listen to this. This is Nick Vamos, formerly of the Crown Prosecution Service.
On its face, John, and of course the devil may be in the detail, but on its face, it looks like a complete abandonment of the last 30, 40 years of US policy, which was to try and level the playing field by stamping out overseas bribery and corruption, get everybody to enforce those laws against their own companies, and drive out corruption, which is a scourge on economies around the world. President Trump, in his transactional way, seems to have reached the conclusion that this is disadvantaging US companies. Perhaps he thinks the Chinese are bribing their way around Asia and Africa to get access to rare earth metals and so forth. And therefore he thinks it's not a level playing field and US companies should be allowed to behave in the same way, otherwise they're going to lose the race. And as a lawyer and as a former prosecutor and now a defense lawyer, I think that abandonment of the rule of law and the moral high ground and the sort of the justice, one rule of justice for all is a great shame.
Right.
And it appears to be a politicization of the criminal justice system in keeping with other moves President Trump has made recently.
So, Harry, that's the view of a former senior prosecutor in this country, an abandonment of the rule of law and a race to the bottom of standards in the world business. Could it also be counterproductive, though, Harry, in your view, from an American business point of view?
Absolutely. I think everything that was just said, it's hard to disagree with. And I think one of the ideals and principles that the U.S. has been a stalwart supporter of around the world is business integrity and fairness in making transactions, and not to try to make deals in the shadows rather than in the open market transaction kind of way that America, frankly, has become the global standard up until recently. Yeah. Terms of integrity in business.
And also overnight, President Trump has sacked the director of the Office of Government Ethics. Does that cross your radar when it concerns your responsibilities monitoring investment into America?
Absolutely. I mean, again, that's just another metaphor for what we were just discussing in terms of bribery overseas, or whether it's making sure that the officials here in the United States are making policy, above board, and that really undercuts, again, the principle of the United States. The one thing I will just footnote here is whether U.S. firms, in and of themselves, will not want to go down that road for fear of what stakeholders, whether it's democratic activists, labor unions, consumers, to the extent that consumers make decisions based upon the stature of the company whose products they're trying to buy. It's somewhat of an untested hypothesis,
yes.
but I would not downgrade that issue right now.
All right. Harry Broadman, who's chair of the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. Thank you so much for joining us, Harry.
Sure.
Now, I want to turn now to Liam Byrne, who at Westminster is chair of the Business and Trade Select Committee of MPs. Liam, welcome to the programme.
John, hi.
I really am keen, Liam, to hear what you make of the president just in the last hours pausing America's Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, allowing American companies to bribe foreign governments to win contracts without any fear of prosecution. What do you think of that, Liam?
So I don't think it's a great signal. You've obviously got the rise of kleptocracy around the world. You've got lots of companies and bad actors that have in the past, for example, used London as a place where they launder their fortunes, which have been stolen from people all over the world, but especially in Russia and Central Asia. So I think it's going to backfire. I think, as you've already heard, you've got lots of representatives of American businesses who see this as a backward step. Ultimately, business wants good, strong rule of law. It's one of the reasons that we're seen as a great place to do business.
Yeah.
And so we've just got to continue to fly the flag for strong ethics, rule of law, and some of those traditions for which we're rightly lauded around the world.
Right, that raises one or two political points I want to come back to. But from a business point of view, the point of view of British business, what could this mean for British firms who are now competing with those firms who've been told, look, go ahead, bribe away to your heart's content? What does it mean for those British firms?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it could mean less than we fear, actually, because the reality is, I mean, we have very, very strong anti-corruption laws in this country. You've got directors who are under a duty to prevent corruption in their organisations. They face really tough penalties if they don't take those steps. Ultimately, look, I think good ethics is good for business, and so I think actually it could turn out to be a competitive advantage for the UK in markets abroad. And remember that lots of companies actually win these big contracts in overseas markets by partnering with others. And, if you're putting together, world-beating coalitions or partnerships or syndicates, then actually are you going to want to include American firms that are just playing by lower standards to you? I'm not sure. I think it creates a different kind of risk. So I just think, look, we're in a world now where risk is going up and there's a real premium on strong ethics. And I think actually we may find that it actually is something that British firms do well by.
Right. Of course, it could create a world where British firms are partnering with American firms for big contracts in the world market. And then we're seeing a situation where our prosecutors, British prosecutors, are going after those who are putting together that deal because corruption's involved, and America are taking a quite different view of all of this and then pushing pressure on British authorities. You can see how that is possible, or at least conceivable.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're running an American business and you're in that situation, and that directors in your sub companies or subsidiary companies are suddenly vulnerable to action from UK or indeed European regulators, I think actually that is going to act as a pretty effective floor on bad behaviour. I think American businesses, they are like many firms around the world, they are risk averse.
Yes.
Is this a risk they want to run?
Yeah.
Well, it's probably not worth it.